Welcome to Mum Days, a beautiful collective of mamas and experts sharing wisdom, inspiration, and life hacks to support us on this journey through the hazy days of motherhood. Welcome back to the Mum Days podcast. I'm your host, Holly Lowe, and I am thrilled to be chatting with Dr. Heather Rhodes. This is something that intrigues me because I'll be honest, I've never heard of a holistic pharmacist. I've heard of holistic everything else. So I'm excited to learn more about what you do and what it is that has inspired you to do what you're doing. And I know you have a passion for women's health. That's why you're here. And hormones are a big one in your work and what you do, and that is a passion of mine as well, helping mamas who postpartum or are trying to conceive figure out the mystery of what is going on with their hormones. So I'm happy to have an expert on here who can shed some light on that mystery of those hidden hormones that we seem to know very little about. So welcome, Heather. I appreciate you taking the time to come join us.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much, Holly. I'm so excited to be here. I love chatting about hormones and all the things. And so I just feel really blessed to be able to be over here and chat with you.
Awesome. So I want to know, first and foremost, tell me, because I need to know, what is a holistic pharmacist?
Yeah. So essentially it just means that I'm traditionally trained as a pharmacist, and then I've done additional training to be certified as a holistic health practitioner. So it's not like it's not like there's like this realm of holistic pharmacists that do different things. It's really just that as a pharmacist with traditional training, we work on counseling patients and lifestyle modifications and a lot of education. And that's kind of a turn pharmacy's taken in the last like 20, 30 years. Previously, it was like, oh, we know a lot about the drugs and we kind of stick to that. But then once it became a doctorate program, we realized like in the traditional health realm that pharmacists can fit this role for education. Right. And so we learn about how every part of the body works, because you have to know that when you take medications, that we started being utilized for more education and management of chronic disease states. And that's what my specific training from pharmacy was. I did a residency after graduating that focused primarily on metabolic conditions. So like if you've got something long term that's being influenced by your metabolic state or capacity, how do we help support you in that, whether it be with medications or not? And then over the course of my practice and just being plugged in different doctors' offices, I realized that like clients, patients, the population really wants to know, how do I actually get better from the root cause? So like, how do I figure out what's truly going on and then do something to support myself to really healing, rather than just taking a medication and being okay with taking it the rest of my life. So I love to really bridge that gap and help people understand, like, when we go after, that's what holistic means, like the root cause. When we look at the whole body, everything that's going on as a whole, there's a lot of ways we can support you. And that can be something that can be done while you're taking medicines, while you're not taking medicines, if you have a specific health goal or not. Like, it's just such great information to have.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because we are becoming much more educated as patients and as, the people who are being responsible for our bodies. Even my family doctor always laughs. He's like, man, I have to be so on top of it now, which is funny to hear, a GP say, but I appreciate he is. But it's the same. I can understand with pharmacy, even sometimes more, because I know with me, when I had to, in the rare occasions I've had a prescription, I will tell the pharmacist things that maybe I didn't tell the doctor, or I will ask questions that I feel comfortable asking them and feel more comfortable with their information. So, and it kind of depends on what your situation is, I think, with your caregiver too. I've had mamas who are like, I don't love my OB and I'm not super comfortable with their advice, but then they'll go talk to, an amazing pharmacist who gives really great advice, and they're like, okay, that made me feel better. So it's a really important role, and I appreciate that you're taking it, into that holistic approach, because there's so much more to it, than just a prescription.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of that too is, I think I'm hoping that we are totally starting to shift as a population to a healthcare model that really involves a team, um, to do more than just like, oh, my doctor is the only person I see, my only resource. I really think, especially now that there are more chronic conditions, if you have something that's impacting you every single day, then having a lot of experts, a lot of different modalities, having really curious physicians that are working on your
Yes.
long term care plan can be so beneficial. And I think, again, I just think that having more resources, more education, more knowledge sets you up to actually feeling better and really saving money. And
Yep.
I think it's something that we're starting to realize, because money drives everything. Like, we can't really get
Yeah.
around that. And so the healthcare industry is the way it is because of money. And how do we really optimize things as a business, is really how a lot of it functions. And so when you think about it from that standpoint, it makes sense to do more preventative education and care and that type of thing. It really is just, how do we maneuver insurance companies and billing and reimbursements and all of that in to fit that model. So I see a lot of people kind of picking from their traditional care team for certain things. And this is what I do. I have a concierge doctor. So I use her for like my annual physical, my lab works, PAPs, all of that stuff. But then I also have a chiropractor, and then I also have nutritionists that I work with. And so
Right.
I really have this team that I kind of pull from. We have a fertility acupuncturist. So I
Mm.
just love, being able to say, like, hey, I'm going to be the CEO of my health, of my goals, of my decisions, and then even of my family's. And then I'm going to choose who I bring on my team to
Right.
get me closer to the goal. And I think that's another huge piece of it, is just realizing, like, we're choosing. Like, we are, our doctors, our physicians, like, everybody's still working for us. And I think
That's
we
right.
forget that. We give away all
Mhm.
that power and we just say, like, oh my gosh, I hate my OB. They treat me so disrespectfully. They won't let me make my own decisions. I ask a question and get made to feel stupid. And in any other realm, like, we
Yeah.
wouldn't pay those people money. We wouldn't
That's
hang
right.
out with them. We
We'd be
wouldn't, like,
asking to talk to their supervisor. You know?
yeah, yeah, like,
Yeah.
if we were treated that way at Target, we'd be pissed and,
Yeah.
like, do something about it, but we're treated like that when it comes to our most, like, vulnerable situations,
True.
and we just accept it because we don't know what else to do. And I really think that's where the education and taking that ownership role of your health plays a huge difference, because when you come at it from that perspective, you get results and you feel different and things change because it's a non-negotiable. You
That's
don't
right.
you don't allow them not to.
That's one of the things I used to tell my doula clients all the time over the years was, "You're not a patient, you're a client, and then on
Mhm.
top of that, you're the boss." There's
Exactly.
gonna be that role shifting that has to happen throughout birth and labor and things like that, but you call the shots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's such good information. So,
So I want to get into hormones because this is a huge topic for our followers. Oh my gosh. And I've experienced this over the years. The last 3 years, a lot of our followers have followed my journey of trying to get pregnant again in my 40s and everything that comes with that. And it's been a real eye opener to work with a whole team, like you're talking about, naturopath, acupuncturist, my doctor, a fertility specialist, all kinds of different modalities that have poured into me and given me such incredible wisdom. But hormones are the key. They're like that little magic thing. And yet I know family doctors know here anyway in Canada, it's just a very brushed aside subject, right? And it's that mysterious thing. Like, so many women have said to me, "Well, I feel this, and this, these symptoms, and it seems to point to what I Googled being my thyroid or a hormone imbalance." But that's as far as they get. It's as much
yeah,
as we know. So I
yeah.
want to know a little bit. It's a big topic, I know, and I'll let you kind of pick what you want to share. But how do we even know, first of all, if we are dealing with hormone imbalances? Because I know so many people are and don't even realize it.
Yeah, yeah. I think a big piece of that is understanding the role hormones play. So everything that happens in your body happens via hormones. It's almost like if our body was like a highway system, hormones are the cars. So, like, nothing's getting
Right.
done without them in some capacity. And I think that's a really key thing to just know and understand. And when I say that, I don't just mean like your estrogen and progesterone, like female
Right.
hormones. I mean, like, you have hormones that tell your brain that wake you up in the morning, that tell your brain to be happy or sad, that tell you to cry or not to cry, that, decides how fast you should be breathing. Like that's the basic things hormones are doing. And so I think that's one piece of it. And then I think as women, we have this whole other piece of understanding that our core design and function truly is to reproduce. And so if that's something our body is doing day in and day out for, 20, 30 plus years of our lives, there's no way that's not, those hormones aren't playing a role in how we feel day in and day out.
That's right.
And so I think there's almost a way to say, what is it besides hormones? Instead of like, well, is it hormones? Well, yeah, it has to be in some capacity. But what else is going on? And how do we know it's a hormone imbalance is truly what's at the root? Because you could have something else at the root, like a gut imbalance or
Right.
an issue with bacteria or chronic yeast or a mineral issue. Minerals and electrolytes are what allow hormones to do their jobs.
Right.
And so it may look like a hormone imbalance, but really it's that your body's making the right amount of hormones. It's just you don't have the right electrolytes to keep them in balance. And I think one of the things that trips people up the most and why hormones feel so confusing is because they operate in what we call negative feedback loops. So this is like, that sounds like a really fancy term, but just like stay with me. So essentially what happens is that your body is always making stuff while always trying to figure out, have I made enough? So what happens is once the hormones are out there, if they hit the receptor, which is like where they do their job at, it sends a signal back to the makers of the hormones and says like, hey, we've got enough, you're good. And so because hormones are always, they're kind of like this machine where they're always pumping out hormones until they're told to stop. You can have symptoms of both high and low amounts of the same hormone because maybe your body's making a ton of estrogen, it's just not getting out of the receptors appropriately. Or maybe your body isn't making too much, but what's there isn't being cleared out through your gut and your digestive system
Yeah.
appropriately. Or maybe it's that your body's getting a signal from somewhere else that's saying, hey, you don't need to make any more of those hormones. And so we see this a lot with thyroid hormones, with estrogen, with progesterone. And that I think is why it feels so confusing to women because we can have symptoms of high estrogen and low estrogen all at the same time. And the other piece of that is that our hormones cycle. So there are certain times within a 28-day period, you should have peak estrogen levels and you should have low estrogen levels. And if the low times it's high and if the high times it's low, you feel like, okay, well, there's got to be one thing that's going on. And it may not be this one thing. I hear a lot like I'm estrogen dominant. It may not be that you're estrogen dominant.
Right.
It may be that your estrogen activity isn't appropriate. It's high at certain times and low at certain times. And then we look at, well, what causes that? So then we go a little deeper. So I think that's probably why it feels so confusing. But I can say that like the way from the amount of women I work with and the like variety of disease states I work with, all the way from when I was in the physician's office working with high blood pressure and diabetes to now where I focus more on like PCOS and fertility stuff. What we see is that the same basic principles support your body to operating super effectively.
Right.
And so we come in and we think it's like other conditions where, oh, okay, if I'm constipated, I have to do this, 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 and this to not be constipated anymore. That's not how hormones in that system works. The way it works is that your body's got the machinery, it's got the equipment. We need to make sure it has the ingredients and it will do what it needs to do. Our job is really to support that system. And that's where I think a lot of us get tripped up is because we live in a society that doesn't support that system at all.
Yeah.
All the things we do day in and day out actually disrupt that system and make it really confusing. And so it takes knowledge, it takes intentionality, it takes these shifts in our everyday choices to allow our body to go back into balance. But that's the best part is that when it comes to hormones, your body does all the work.
Yeah.
And so we're actually like getting tripped up and messing things up when we're like, oh, I just need to take synthetic hormones, or I just need to replace my estrogen, or I just need to replace my progesterone. And then it's like, oh my gosh, you've taken a process, a machine, a factory that's able to do exactly what it needs to do, and you've come in and just like pulled their power source. And
Right.
now you're like, this is what I had to do. And it's like, no, you didn't. You just needed to like resupply the ingredients and then the machinery would work the way it needed to work. And so I definitely understand and I empathize so much because I have my own journey. I think we all do when we work in this space of feeling that frustration of like, I know something's wrong, but I don't know what. I'm being dismissed. No one's helping me. No one's
Yeah.
teaching me. Like everyone's just trying to throw a med at me and get me out of their office as quickly as possible. And
Yeah.
that sucks. And
Well,
so,
especially when I think symptomatically too, and I don't know if you touch on this, but I think symptomatically when it comes to hormone issues, like you said, it's what else is going on. And that's not always looked at, but also the symptoms of hormone imbalances or just, hypo, hyper, whatever it is with your thyroid, whatever could be happening, those are symptoms are rather vague, right? Like if
yeah,
you're in your 40s, if you're perimenopausal and you have fatigue and thinning hair and a bit of weight gain and whatever, it is like I've heard this over and over again. It is the most common thing for the doctor just to say, it's just your age. Welcome to your 40s to women. And I'm thinking, no, 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 no. Like we are going to age and we are going to change and our hormones are going to shift. That's natural. That's part of it. But there are things we can do to optimize that process and to, like you
yeah,
said, nurture what's happening in our body. And with the, oxytocin and our stress levels that we're running in every single day. I remember when I had my first hormone panel, we did the saliva testing over certain days over the course of a cycle.
okay.
And I remember looking at that. And when I got the results back, speaking to the doctor that I had done the test with, and he was a holistic doctor. And he said, so basically, you're in fight or flight 24/7. And I don't know what you're doing. Like this, you can't operate like this. Like it was through the roof. But he said that explains all your symptoms.
Mm.
So the reality is he could have just, given me something for just, well, you're tired or you're this. He goes, you have to make changes to your lifestyle. That
Yeah.
was the answer. And like you said, it's not always give me a pill and leave the office. Sometimes it's us taking responsibility for how our body's speaking to us and
Mm.
letting us know, I'm not happy with how you're living right now, or how you're eating, or your level of rest or exercise. It's that holistic view, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that is a very huge holistic principle in general because there's not a single system in your body that will operate well under chronic stress. And
That's right.
then we think that like chronic stress means that we like feel stressed out, that, like mentally we're stressed out, and that's not the case at all. Everybody's body is being exposed to stress signals day in and day out regardless. So
Mhm.
if you aren't being intentional about lowering stress, your body's not operating the way it needs to be because stress is high. There's no way. I mean, I've never seen it any different than that. And I think that's amazing though that you had a doctor that was able to do that because I think what would normally happen for most women is they get prescribed, something to help them stay awake, or then they get prescribed a
Mm.
mood hormone, or then they get prescribed antibiotics for their gut because their gut's messed up. This is another one that like, oh my gosh, I could like, if this is a soapbox of mine. The number of women that come to me and they're like, I did a food sensitivity test and I have sensitivities to all of this. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, we definitely have sensitivities. And I'm like, well, when did they start? Like, and sometimes it's like, well, it's typically the foods they eat the most often. And they're like in their 30s. And I'm like, so we really think that your body just now, all of a sudden, can't handle these foods you've always eaten your whole life.
Right.
And it's like, because again, we're not given the information we need. We're just looking for anything to tell us what will make us feel
Yeah.
better. And that's a huge, like, I would say this is such a like opinionated, not factual statistic. However, I would guess that like 80% of gut problems comes from a gut that's stressed out. And
Yes.
again,
I
not
agree.
stress from, oh, like something happened tragic that I'm like working through, but stress from like, okay, every day I'm exposed to blue light. Every day I have instant dopamine hits 24/7. Every day I don't have boundaries placed on people's access to me. So my brain's always running. It's so many things. And I'm guilty of it. I don't say it from a place of like, oh, this is what all you people are doing. Like I live it. I live it
Mhm.
and I see it. And every time my body gives me a sign my hormones are off, it always goes back to me knowing that I've stressed it out. And I'm like, well crap, like here I go again. But the key is knowing how to get back on track and the different things you can do to get back on track and
Mhm.
to really support your body in those ways. And I think one of the first steps is exactly what you mentioned. It's knowing how your body talks to you. And so like
Definitely.
knowing what those patterns are, what those symptoms are, because it's not like you just fix the stress and then it goes away. Like I said, I mean, I do this for a living, and every month I'm assessing like how have I done, how have I not done? And I have these very key things that I know if I'm not doing them, my body tells me right away.
Yep.
And then I know like, hey, I've got to go back to doing those things. And
Yep.
that's actually what I think living with hormone balance looks like, because right? I'm not Googling it all the time. I'm not spending endless amounts of money on all this stuff. Like, I'm just going back to my foundations. I'm going back to what my body needs and how to support it so that I can have more good days than not.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's something as we're learning to listen to our body, that's important because we've learned not to. In the lifestyles we live with, the pace we live at is just astonishing to me. And I did that. I did that for so many years to the point of adrenal fatigue and whatever, labels you want to give it, to the point where I went, I can't continue like that.
Mhm.
It's just like you said, it's not always that you feel it in your brain or that you're obviously stressed. It's the everyday, or it's the stuff you didn't deal with, right? It could
Yeah.
be from your childhood. It could be, if you want to get real deep into it, maybe there's some therapy that's needed to bring
Yeah.
some peace or whatever that is. And I just learned that through the last few years on this journey of fertility. It takes a whole story of everything and paying attention to it. Like, I never drank coffee ever in my life until last year. And it was when we were in the US for a couple of months, and I had started drinking coffee here and there, and I would have wicked hot flashes as soon as I had coffee. And I'm like, whoa, that's like dramatic, you know?
Yeah.
I also was having panic attacks, super high anxiety.
Yeah.
And it was my sister, my older sister was like, well, caffeine is a trigger, to some of those things. You might want to pay attention to that. And I switched to decaf. And from that point on, fine.
Yeah.
So some of that is like, I talked to all kinds of women who are like, I'm not giving up coffee. There's no way. Like, but that exhaustion is not being taken care of by your caffeine addiction, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say that's like one of my most controversial like topics in general, because people will say like, I will do anything to fix my hormones. Like, it's so bad, I'll do anything. But then we say, all right, we've got to lower your stress. And then there's like these non-negotiables, right? Because like we can't change the things that stress us out. If you've got kids, you're gonna have stress in your life. Like,
Yeah.
we can't change that. I can't be like, all right, we'll trade your kids back in. I mean, like, we can't do that, right? So we say, all right, what's gonna make the biggest bang for your buck? What are the biggest shifts you can make? Pick 3 of them, no more. So now instead of doing 15 things a day, you're just picking 3. All you have to do are 3 things a day. One of them tends to usually be coffee, and people, they like can't do it. And they're like, no, I can't, like, not happening. Which I get to some extent, but I'm also like, I think, and again, it just goes back to like culture, society, like all of that. Like, I don't think there's any education on what coffee actually is. Like, coffee is the equivalent of you waking up. So let's say you're like driving on the road and a little kid runs out in front of you, and you have to slam on the brakes and you get that like rush. That's all coffee is. And we hold it in our hands and sip on it all day long. And then we're like, why do I feel like this? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And again, I'm guilty of it. When I was in pharmacy school, when I was working as a pharmacist, when I was in the doctor's offices, like, and I wasn't playing games. I was like the Starbucks venti Americano, like, every single day. I loved that rush. I loved that feeling. I was like, oh, this is great. And then we were on a fertility journey too. And I didn't have a period for like, I mean, months and months and months. And I was like, I'll do anything. But like, no, not, my doctor was like, here, take some medicine to make yourself ovulate, rather than saying like, well, what are you doing with
Yeah.
caffeine or your diet or, whatever. And so that's why I say you're so lucky, because you had a doctor that was like, hey, you got to do something differently. Whereas my journey was probably 2 years where I was working with like conventional doctors.
Mm.
And during that time period, I was living on coffee. I was working 10-hour shifts. I was CrossFit and marathon training at the same time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I refused to eat over 1,000 calories. That's where my brain was mentally.
Right.
And the fact that like that was never a conversation with up to 4 separate OBs, 4 separate, even
Mm.
fertility specialists.
Yep.
None of them ever said anything to me. I never even knew it was a problem. And I went to pharmacy school. And that's why I do what I do now, because I was like, how did I go through 4 physicians, 6 years of a graduate program, a residency? I worked in doctor's offices every day and never knew this.
Yeah.
And like that was really when I was like, that's it. Like I'm joining the holistic army, like signing up. I'm
I
not
love it.
letting women go through this anymore.
That's amazing. Well, you know what? Mamas can take this away and feel good because, in a
Yeah.
sense, that removes. I talk to so many moms again, and myself included, where you walk with this guilt of, oh, I should have known. You know what? There are doctors, experts, pharmacists who had no idea of the
None.
holistic idea of behind fertility and of your reproductive health and all of that. It's so big, and you can't specialize in everything.
Yeah.
It's just not something you can do. But as a client, you have to take that into your hands and find that team. And
Yeah.
that's what I had to do. I had, like I said, I did a fertility program in the US with Dr. Cleopatra. She's phenomenal. And with a very holistic approach, but still a research specialist. I did my naturopath here who was doing all the Dutch testing and
Yeah.
all the monthly cycle testing and all those things. I put in the effort, but it also had, food information. It had, I run a fertility cleanse program because I learned so much out of that. Just getting your gut set up, because like you said,
Yeah.
like our gut controls so much of the production that's going on in our body as well. So I think I love what you're saying and what you're doing because it's taking our traditional information, making it a whole other level, like another step further. And when it comes to something, so I'm going to shift topics for a second and I think we'll have to have other conversations about this because there's so many things we could talk about. But something like, so PCOS, I suffered from endometriosis after my second baby, just for a short amount of time, actually, which was thankful. But I have a little taste of it, what that's like with those cycles. So when you're dealing with something like that, is there hope that you can balance your body again?
Oh, for sure. Like, not even a doubt, because, like I said, your body is always like our bodies as women is so. This is why I love working with fertility patients, because, like, your body is doing the work. Like, you
Yeah.
literally have, it's like, again, it's like you're buying a business that's already operating, right?
Yeah.
It's already got employees, it's already knows like systems, operations, everything's in place. Your job's just to come in and help it make money, right? And so that's what we're doing when we come in and look at fertility, because your body's doing the work. It's always trying to go back to balance. It's always trying to, get you that result that you're looking for. It's just, how do we partner with it? How do we use the systems that it already has? How do we work with the way it's designed? How do we understand what signals it's getting, how it's interpreting signals, what that causes? It's really just an auditing process. And then we figure out, okay, these are the things that we need to start switching up. And the key there is then you have to stay consistent and
Yeah.
then you have to trust, right? So we don't get results if there's not some layer of trust in anything. Again, business, bodies, health, it always takes action, trust, results. And so sometimes that means you trust, your body for 8 months and then we reassess and audit again. Sometimes that means you trust your body for 4 or 5 years and then always reassessing, always keeping tabs on it, but also always knowing that like your body can do it. And if it can't, it's telling you why. It's just how deep do we dig. And one thing that I really love doing for women, because what I found in my journey was kind of that you either go to traditional medicine and you kind of don't really get the help you're quote unquote looking for most of the time. Sometimes you can, but a lot of times you don't. And then you go to like naturopathic medicine and it almost feels like the total opposite, where it's just like this full on overwhelm and you're testing everything and
Yes.
everything in your body isn't working right. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I love to help women do is stand in the middle of, all right, listen, we want to look at the basics. Your body's telling us this almost every time. This is how we do it. This is how we make sure your body has what it needs to make hormones. This is how it has what it needs to get rid of them when we talk about gut health. This is how it has what it needs to really increase the signals from your brain to your ovaries to strengthen those processes. And then if after that we're still in a spot where you're not seeing results, or maybe like your BBTs or your cervical mucus isn't telling us that you are a fertility freaking machine, then we go deeper.
Right.
So that way you're not just like going from one extreme to the other and floating somewhere in the middle without the information, without being able to be the CEO. It's almost like um, with like naturopathic stuff, it's almost like you went from not owning a business to being like in the middle of a Forbes 500 company board.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
that's true.
what? Yeah. And so I'm like, no, no, no. Let's go to like startup school first, right? Like let's give you the basics
Yeah.
and make sure that you feel so equipped with those that now you can enter into these further testing things like Dutch testing, like stool
Right.
testing, like food sensitivity testing, and see, okay, with this information, what's actually going to change? What's going to actually direct what we're doing? And
Yeah.
how do you, and this is another piece of it of why I think, because a lot of us would feel like, I don't care to know all of that. I'm
Yeah.
going to trust the experts, and what they tell me to do, I'm going to do. And that's cool if you want to take that approach. But I think you miss something really, really special when you do that.
Yeah.
Because again, as women, we're creators and we have an intuition for a reason, mother's intuition, right? Like, and if you think about it, we probably wouldn't let someone do that when it comes to our kids. If
Mhm.
when you ask moms, like, do you just blindly trust your pediatrician with everything they say with your kids? They're like, no. But if you said like, well, if you would you just pay this practitioner, this whoever it may be, to give you a meal plan and tell you exactly what to do and then you'll follow it? They're like, yeah, for sure. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, no, 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 no. Like
Yeah.
you're missing that you have that intuition. You have this special power, essentially, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
that allows you to be a deciding force to impact those decisions you make. And that's going to get you closer to results than you just going in and someone saying, like, well, these are the 30 things that are wrong. I think we should tackle these five. And
Right.
then you're like, okay, sure, we'll tackle those five. But when you go in and you know, like, okay, cool, well, I know this is okay. I know that I don't have the capacity to do this right now. I think this is what I'm going to focus on for this amount of time. And then we'll go to the next one. Like, you're coming in and you're really able to bring that extra knowing, that expertise on you and on your body, and able to direct the care path. And that I think
Absolutely.
is huge.
It is. It is. And the thing I think what's key too is that a lot of, well, everything in there is connected. Right. So to say that I'm just going to deal with this, or this, or like you said, it's, it's a crap storm of everything. Like, I don't even know where to begin. That
Yeah.
when you're talking about the basics, if you can line those up and kind of walk through those basics first, you're definitely going to be in a better place then to decide what's actually connected next.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
is it hormone, fluctuating at that time of the month that's causing an issue? Is my luteal phase off? Is
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. And then you have a roadmap,
Yeah.
right? Here's
Yeah.
the next.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. Because again, like if you've spent your time working on the foundations, then when you do actually test, everything doesn't look like a storm.
Right.
It should really be a much clearer picture of
Yeah.
what's going on. Because again, if you've got stress levels that are off the charts, if you've got, your gut's messed up, you've got all the signs of estrogen dominance and low progesterone, then let's tackle that first. So that way, by the time we actually do the testing, it's really going to give us that clear picture of what is still kind of
Yeah.
lingering, what is still causing the issue, what is the next step to really tackle. Because if you do it before you go through those first phases, everything's going to look off and it's going to be like, well, it's going to be the same treatment regardless. That's one thing. I
Yeah.
talk to so many practitioners. This is really like I don't want to call it an industry secret, but I talk with people that do what I do that are like, a lot of steps ahead of me. And I ask them like, okay, well, because I don't do a lot of testing at all. Like I said, I do basics. And I'm like, I think I need to get the certification. I'm going to start doing testing. And I've had countless amounts of them tell me, you can, but why? they say, they're like, it's not going to change the patients that are coming to you, you're going to do the same thing for regardless. And I
Wow.
appreciate that so much. But I'm also like, well, dang, like, all right then. And again, there's some people that, and this isn't a bad thing at all, at all, at all. But there's some people that really need to see the results. They need to see it on a test. And I was probably this person before of like, no, I'm fine. But if you were to show me like labs, I'd be like, oh, okay, I get it now. So there's definitely a need for the testing in some regards, but I also think that like if you know if your intuition's telling you like if it's just really coming down to where do I start, I don't think you need to start with all the tests and the full workup and thousands of dollars worth of supplements. Like none of that's going to actually get you in like a really great. It's almost like I don't know if you've seen that meme of it's like a ladder and there's all these like small steps on one side and then on the other side it's just two huge steps. And so they're getting to the same spot, but the guy can't even reach the
Yeah,
first step. And I'm like, man, if that's not a great picture of what's
it's
actually
true.
happening, because if you can't reach the first, you're both going to get to that step eventually. It's
Yeah.
just how easily can you get there, and then how what results are you seeing? What progress are you seeing if you can't even grab and grasp a sustainable approach to tackling that first step?
Well, if your goal is stress reduction or any of those things, if you're in this process, like I've been down very stressful processes in this
Yeah.
journey, and then I've been down very simple, like wow, that was easy, like simple adjustments, like you didn't have caffeine with all your other babies, so maybe just take that back out, like little things that you go, what did I do differently, or what's different now? Yes, I'm in my 40s now, so for me, having a hormone panel done was important because then I could look at it and go, oh, phew, everything is still the same, right? Like it just
Exactly.
gives you that for my age, that peace of mind that you go, you know what, age is a number right now with
Yeah.
fertility. So this doesn't matter for me. I am okay. Everything looks like it did when I was 35.
Yeah.
So, it's totally personal and totally individual, but knowing that you can start with just, like you said, those little steps. And I don't
Mhm.
know if you agree, but I think across the board, finding a routine, a daily routine of, finding peace and meditation, whatever it is, finding some calm in your day is
Yeah.
so key for every woman. And then just making sure gut health is on par, like just those are little steps. But I always say, even in business, right? It's the easy to do, easier not to do. It's those daily steps or those daily choices that are easy to do. They're not hard, right? It's not like
Mhm.
having to go see a specialist in another country and have testing done and do, that's that big
Yeah.
rung. That's the big step. Those little daily choices we're making, they're not hard choices, but it's easier not to do them, I think, for many of us. And I'm guilty of that, right? Like there were so many
Yeah.
times that I went, oh crap. Like this was not a good stress day. Like I really or I said yes to too many things this week or
Yeah.
this month, you know? And it was interesting just taking a year off traveling for me. Taking a year off speaking engagements other than online things made a massive difference. And I loved doing those things. Right. So it's not the idea that it's a tragedy or it's a super hard, stressful moment in your life. It could be things you really, you've thrived on, you thought, but your body didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about seasons too. And
Yeah.
so I think that's another key piece of it is that just because we're taking, 4 months to be super intentional to lower stress and to cut out caffeine and to do like that's the season. And once
Yeah.
your body, I teach people a lot about this idea of capacity. So
Yeah.
if your body is like run down and you're having symptoms, it means that all your margin, all your capacity, it's like a bank account, right? Like your bank accounts, it's in the red. So what you've got to do is make those deposits, build up your bank account, build up your bank account. Once your bank account's built up, then you can go on a week vacation and have some
Yeah.
coffee or eat differently than you normally do,
Absolutely.
and you don't see much happen because you've got that capacity built up.
Yeah.
And so when people are, saying like, I go on vacation and I gain 10 pounds or I do this and this happens, it's like, oh, that just means you got to start changing your capacity. And I actually wrote a post about this yesterday and I've thought about this so much lately of really like in every industry, it's the unsexy work that gets the results, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not the big flashy thing that you're going to do and all of a sudden feel totally different. And we live in a culture and a society, it's been like hounded on us that showing the flashy, sexy results is success.
Yep.
That means you've done enough. That means you've made it. That means you have worked so hard, and that's what deserves the congratulations and all the praise. And I really take such an opposite approach of like, no, that's not it. It's the unsexy work. It's the showing up every day and tracking your symptoms or watching how well you're pooping. And like that's really
Yeah.
that's like not a
Yeah,
sexy
that's
way to
sexy.
do a weight loss program, right?
Yeah.
But that's those are the people, that's the way to actually get results that last, that
Yep.
are going to be long term, that's going to set your body up to really achieve what you want it to achieve in the long run. I was talking specifically about weight loss because I tell people, like, if you can spend a year, especially people that have done like chronic dieting, all of that,
Yeah.
that are just like, I would do anything to lose weight. Then I say like 6 months to a year
Yep.
of literally doing nothing but supporting and healing your body. And then step into 8 weeks of weight loss and watch what happens. Like
Yep.
it's crazy. But the idea of like, I can't wait a year to lose weight. And it's like, well, you've been trying to lose weight for 6 years. And
That's
so, what is a year at this point? And that had to be my story. I told you part of my story involved a huge issue with body dysmorphia and disordered eating. And that was really something I had to do, was to say, like, this hasn't been working. And even if it does work, like nothing has been sustainable, something
right.
is wrong. So I need to do what I need to do to fix it before I try to tackle this again. And that was probably that year. It was probably like 8 months to a year for me, was the best decision I ever made for my health, for my fertility, for my energy,
Mm.
I mean, all of it. And I'm like, man, if I could convince more women to do this, like literally their lives would change. But I couldn't go and market it like a, faster way to fat loss, beach fat, like any of that stuff, because your transformations, they happen,
Yeah.
but it's over a long period of time and it's not super sexy. And you don't have trainers showing their six packs while they're doing it. It really is. Nope. You just stay consistent and you show up. And it comes with a lot of mindset work that we know
Yes.
we need to do, but we don't like to do. Myself.
Absolutely. And that's something I've learned through the fertility journey too with my clients and myself is mindset is massive. Like that's what I was talking about, that the whole inner healing and the whole dealing with the things that you've pushed down and all that stuff. That's something I'm very passionate about too, because it affects our mindset. It affects our view of our body failing us. The idea that it's not in our control, right? That we've been,
Yeah.
denied the access by our body to do what it's meant to do, when all along you've had choices and you've had the power in your own hands, like you're saying.
Yeah.
We just have to take it, rein it back
Yeah.
in, and take responsibility for those little choices, those little steps every step along the whole process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I think like so much of it too can be brought back. Like the way you get through the unsexy work really is by having a handle of your mindset.
Yeah.
And so if your mindset hasn't been addressed, that's what the one thing I see that messes up so many women. It's not that, like, the women that come into my programs, or that have worked with me one on one and feel like I'm just not seeing results. I'm just not seeing results. It always is because, from what I can see on my perspective, is like, oh, you haven't tackled the mindset. Like the mindset is how you get to sustaining change, sustaining unsexy things long enough to see the results.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, if you were someone that was like, I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail. Well, all of us have the ability to walk as far as the Appalachian Trail is. We all have that ability. The difference is the mindset.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Is it not? What are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? What sacrifices can you sustain, even if it doesn't feel like you can do it?
Right.
And I think that's a huge, huge piece of it too. And
Yeah.
that's why, because a lot of times when I just know for me, when I was in the spot I was in before I started doing this work and before my own journey, I felt like mindset work was so silly. And I was like, my mindset's fine. Like, I'm a positive person. I believe in myself, like, whatever. But it really was walking through what I needed to walk through to understand that if I didn't see results, I could still trust and know what I was doing was building foundation, and that was worth it.
Yeah.
And that is a skill that is going to be applicable in every single part of your life. That helps you stay consistent with disciplining your children, even when you don't see the results of that discipline.
Right.
That helps you stay consistent with building your business. It helps you stay consistent with a marriage, right? Like these daily things I'm doing, my husband may still be acting like a jerk, but I'm going to keep doing them because I trust that in X amount of time, like, it's going to build up. And it does. In
Yep.
any industry, if you looked at the people who are massively successful, I feel like they would all come back to that same type of principle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. We call it the 3 C's, but consistency is one of the big ones because
Yeah.
you can do all the right things. If you don't do it consistently, there's no point. There
Yeah.
really isn't. You've wasted your time. And
Yeah.
that's with our health, that's with our mental health, that's with our scheduling, whatever that looks like. We have to be consistent. And like you said, there's seasons. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember when I was building my business originally, there was two years of absolute hustle, just craziness. But it came with sacrifices that helped balance that out as much as I could,
Mhm.
right? We gave up sports for the kids. We gave up, certain traveling and different activities that we always did to balance out the craziness. But then there was 2 years of me repairing the
Yeah.
craziness, right? And it was something that had to happen. Now I think a lot of us take things on a daily basis that don't need to happen. That's,
Yeah.
something we all have to look at, right? The yes issues with I find with moms, especially with our kids and the over programming or the over committing. That's a whole other topic. But just the ability to step back and say, what's my body saying to me
Mhm.
internally? What's my reproductive system? I haven't had a period in 3 months. What's going on? Right. That's it.
Mhm.
Stress is a big one for changing our actual cycles.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't feel stressed, but maybe I'm overcommitted right now, or maybe
Mhm.
I need to sleep better. It's just such a you know, big
Yeah.
ball of wax. But like you said, if we can take the time to get down to the basics, start there and listen to your body and then decide, okay, who do I need on my team? Someone like yourself for sure. And how are they, what's the result I'm going for? Right. Because I have women in their 40s and 50s who are like, I don't want to get pregnant. I just want my cycles back, to be somewhat normal. Or I've been on
Mhm.
birth control for so many years and it's really
Yeah.
messed my mental health up. I need to get off of it and clean things up. I know a big one. And that's a great first step, right? That identifying where I'm at, where I want to go, and then who do I need to pull in to help me with all of this. So
Exactly. And I think like the best thing just for women to remember is that like doesn't have to be hard, right?
right.
Like when we think about getting results, because again, like society, culture, dieting, all of that, like we think it's going to be miserable and really hard and that we're going to have to focus on all these things and it's just going to be overwhelming and like it literally isn't. Like I have people tell me all the time, like I like the things we talk about are so easy, they're so doable. And I had no idea it could be this simple for me to feel this much better.
Right. And when you are seeing those results over time, it's enjoyable. Like I
Yeah.
remember saying to one of my, people on my team, I was saying, listen, I'm actually surprised I've enjoyed this as much as I have.
Mhm.
Like for me, it's the
Mhm.
learning process. I eat it up. But that
Yeah.
whole step by step, seeing my body start to respond and feeling some energy or, feeling that hope again, that month after month of negative pregnancy tests and then saying, okay, we're on the right track though, right? Like things are
Yeah.
changing. So it's all good. It's all good. And having that hope being built up again, it's a really powerful thing. And it definitely carries you as you make those
Yeah.
right choices. So I love it.
Yeah.
All right. I need to know, how can people work with you if they want to work with you or find you, get some help with you? How does that work?
Yeah. So you can find my website and all the things that I do there. We have some great resources at drheatherrhodes.com. That's all it is. So super simple. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Heather Rhodes, same thing. And I feel like I didn't even feel like we like intended to accidentally go down this pathway about stress and all of that. But if that, just super resonated with someone that was listening and was like, oh my gosh, like I need to know those simple steps. I need to understand how my body talks to me. I need to understand really how to tackle my stress because I know that's bleeding into all these other pieces. I have a course specifically on that.
Oh,
And so
amazing.
it walks through exactly like how your body experiences stress, how to know, how to track symptoms, all of that. And it's called Your Stress Strategy. It's on my website as well. And so
Perfect.
yeah, we do fun things like that. I have courses, and then my favorites, my group programs. I love, love, love working with women there. We have a fertility one, and then one for just a total reset, where we walk through really how do we work with those healing processes that your body's already trying to do. So
Right. Beautiful. Well, I can't wait. I'm going to be connecting all of that into our fertility program as well, because I love to give
yay.
tons of resources and connect
Yeah,
people into what's the next step. So that's perfect. I think
love
that would
it.
be ideal to carry on.
Awesome.
Yay. I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think we should definitely have some more of these conversations. We can
I do
get
too. This is great.
specific on some things because I know I'm going to get loads of questions about, very specific topics on hormones and things like,
Yeah.
just reproductive health and stuff like that. So,
Yes, yes. We should definitely do one that goes deeper into that stuff. I love it.
yeah. Well, it's funny. So my daughter is 9 and she's just on the cusp of wanting to know all period health and all these things. And because I'm a natural mama, she knows that I don't use certain things and I use other things. And so it's interesting to have these conversations now
Oh,
with a little girl coming into
yeah.
those years when I grew up in an age where we never had those conversations, right? It just wasn't, here's your stuff,
Exactly.
here you go. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it's,
our
I think
college
we
education was
need
like,
to have
don't get pregnant.
yeah,
So easy.
exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation I really want to focus on too in the years coming, the months coming, with people like yourself is just how can we have healthy period conversations with our girls and how can we prepare them for their body health as they're moving into hormone changes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we'll
true.
have more chats. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for your time. We will talk some
Awesome.
more, I'm sure.
Of course. Thanks, Holly.
Would you like to learn more? Find me on Instagram and YouTube at Mom Days Podcast.